In the wild heart of the 1880s Southwest, a guarded Apache widow and a quiet cowboy cross paths under a burning sky, each carrying wounds the world never saw. But one question between them changes everything. Before we ride into this powerful tale of trust, healing, and honor, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow for more Wild West stories. Let's get started. The sun was beginning to fall behind the rugged hills of 1880s New Mexico, painting the sky with streaks of orange and rose. Jacob Reed had been traveling the trail alone, guiding his horse along the sandy path, when he spotted the collapsed wagon. Beside it stood a woman, rigid, unmoving, watching him with guarded eyes. Her clothing, her stance, her expression all told him she belonged to the Apache people. But what struck him more was the exhaustion in her posture, the weight of a life that had taken far too much. Jacob slowed his horse, careful not to startle her. Taya didn't speak at first. She studied him like one studies a desert storm, uncertain if he would bring relief or destruction. Jacob dismounted, keeping distance, letting her see his hands were empty. "Your wheel's broken," he said gently. "I can help fix it if you'll allow." She hesitated, every breath tight with mistrust. To her, he was just another cowboy on the road, and too many men had used kindness as bait. But nightfall was approaching fast, and the desert grew merciless after dark. Reluctantly, she nodded once, the smallest gesture of forced acceptance. It was enough. Jacob worked quickly, kneeling beside the damaged wheel, while Taya watched from several feet away. Her gaze never left him. She didn't know this man, didn't know what lay behind his polite voice or steady hands. Memories of past encounters, men who acted gentle before showing their real intentions, kept her spine stiff and her heart restless. Jacob didn't ask questions, didn't comment on her silence. He focused on the wheel, tightening bolts, replacing a cracked piece, offering only simple updates. When he finished, he stepped back, dusting off his hands. "You'll make it to town tomorrow," he said softly. But the night was already dropping its cold curtain across the land. A sharp wind swept through the open stretch, carrying the chill that warned of a dangerous temperature drop. Jacob glanced at the sky, then at her shivering figure. "There's no warmth out here," he said. "You can stay by my fire tonight. I'll keep my distance." The words sounded simple, but for Taya, accepting them meant risking everything. Still, her body trembled, and the desert was unforgiving. Against every instinct she possessed, she followed him toward a small patch of brush where he set up camp. The fire crackled, throwing soft light across the sand. Taya sat on one side, wrapped tightly in her shawl, while Jacob sat on the opposite side, deliberately far enough to show he meant no harm. He cooked simple beans over the flames, offering a portion without forcing her to accept. She took it silently. For long minutes, neither spoke. The quiet was thick, but not uncomfortable, at least not for Jacob. For Taya, the silence carried tension, memories, warnings. Every flicker of the fire reminded her of nights when trust had cost her dearly. She watched Jacob closely. Jacob kept his gaze on the fire, knowing better than to meet her eyes too long. He sensed her fear, not of him specifically, but of what men had been to her in the past. The firelight revealed the fatigue carved into her face, the way her shoulders never fully relaxed. He felt a protective ache in his chest, not born of desire, but of empathy. No one should look that hunted. As he stirred the fire, he said calmly, "If you need more space, say the word." That simple offer made Taya tense even more. Kindness terrified her. She watched him rise briefly to fetch another blanket from his saddlebag. His steps were slow, careful, as if he understood how easily sudden movement could trigger fear. When he approached, she tried not to shrink back, but her body reacted before her mind could reason. He noticed, of course he noticed, and stopped a few feet away. With a gentle motion, he extended the blanket. His expression held no sharpness, no hidden hunger, just concern. That confused her more than anything. Men were predictable until they weren't. Her breathing quickened as he held the blanket out to her. And then, before she could stop the tremor in her voice, the question burst from her like an old wound reopening. "Cowboy, do you desire me like the others?" The words scraped the air, heavy and trembling. Jacob froze mid-motion. For a moment he simply stood there, absorbing the pain behind her statement. He had expected caution from her, mistrust even, but not this. He lowered his gaze, not in guilt, but in respect for the weight she carried. Slowly, he set the blanket on a rock between them, taking a full step back. "No, ma'am," he said quietly. "I'm here to help, not to take." His voice held no defensiveness, no protest, just honesty. But Taya's heart didn't soften instantly. Trauma doesn't yield that easily. She pulled the blanket toward herself, but kept her eyes narrowed, searching for cracks in his sincerity. Jacob sat down again, farther than before, giving her even more space than necessary. The fire cast long shadows across the ground, framing them like two survivors sitting on opposite sides of a broken world. Taya's heartbeat slowly steadied, but her mind kept replaying old memories, hands grabbing, voices demanding, promises turning to threats. Jacob didn't speak again unless spoken to, and that simple restraint eased some of the weight pressing against her chest. He tended the fire, fed his horse, and prepared his own space to sleep, never once turning his back on her, but never staring either. For the first time in a long while, Taya felt something unfamiliar, not trust, not comfort, but the possibility of safety, a small, fragile possibility. She lay near the fire, pulling the blanket tight around her body, watching Jacob as he settled down several feet away. She didn't believe him completely, but she believed enough to close her eyes. The morning sun rose slowly over the plains, spreading a pale gold light across the quiet camp. The chill of night was fading, replaced by a gentle warmth that brushed against the land. Jacob was already awake, moving with quiet purpose as he tightened the straps on his saddle. He didn't look at Taya much, not because he was ignoring her, but because he understood she needed space to breathe, to think, to trust at her own pace. Taya sat near the dying fire, wrapped in the blanket he left for her, watching him with the same guarded intensity as the night before. She wasn't used to this kind of silence from a man. Most men filled the air with questions, suggestions, or disguised commands, testing her boundaries, picking at her defenses, trying to find what they could take. But Jacob's silence was different. It wasn't a weapon or a trick. It felt patient, respectful. Taya shifted slightly, unsure what to make of him. Her mind warned her to keep her guard high, to assume every offering came with strings. Her heart, exhausted from years of fear, whispered something else, something quieter, something dangerous. Maybe he means it. Jacob checked the cinch one last time, his movements steady and practiced. He had been around enough wounded animals and wounded people to know the importance of gentle handling. He didn't try to make eye contact with Taya. He didn't put pressure on her. He simply worked, letting the soft clinks of metal and leather fill the space. Taya watched him with conflicted eyes. She expected at some point the change, the shift in tone, the demand, the claim. It always came. It always showed. Yet Jacob remained unchanged, calm as sunrise. It confused her more than it comforted her. Finally, she stood and walked toward him, her footsteps slow, cautious. Her shawl, draped around her shoulders, fluttered lightly in the morning breeze. Jacob noticed her approach, but didn't turn. He kept his eyes on the saddle, as if giving her the control of the moment. "Most men only offer help when they want something," she said, her voice steady but edged with tired truth. "Why are you different?" Jacob paused briefly, then tightened the strap with one firm pull. Only then did he answer, still facing the horse. "Because what you've been through is enough burden He finally turned his head toward her, not fully, but enough for her to see his expression. "You don't need mine added to it," he said softly. The words hit her harder than she expected, not because they were poetic or grand, but because they were simple, honest. Taya studied him, her eyes searching for cracks in the calm. She looked for signs of manipulation, hidden, hunger, the usual flicker of entitlement she had learned to detect instantly. But Jacob's gaze held only sincerity, solid, quiet, and strangely steady. It unsettled her because it felt real. Realness was dangerous. She stepped back slightly, not out of fear, but to gather her thoughts. Jacob busied himself with adjusting his saddlebag, acting as if nothing significant had just been said. But Taya was shaken. Men didn't speak that way. Men didn't offer help without expecting something in return. She wrapped the blanket tighter around herself, trying to understand the man before her. Every instinct told her to walk away, keep moving, never attach hope to a stranger. Yet something softer tugged at her, a quiet curiosity she hadn't felt in years. What if this one truly means no harm? Jacob finally turned fully toward her, his hat casting a shadow over his eyes. "Town's about half a day's ride," he said calmly. "You can follow behind me if you prefer distance." That offer stunned her more than anything else. He wasn't asking her to ride with him. He wasn't pulling her into his path. He was leaving the choice entirely in her hands. Taya exhaled slowly, her breath catching somewhere between relief and disbelief. No cowboy, no man, had ever placed her comfort above his own intentions. She felt the tightness in her chest begin to loosen, if only slightly. She looked at the horizon, then back at Jacob. The land ahead was vast, long and empty, but with him, the trail didn't feel quite as threatening. Her voice softened, not weak, but calmer than before. "I'll ride with you," she said, "but only until I reach the next town." It was a condition, a boundary, and a warning all at once. Jacob nodded, as if the decision was the most natural thing in the world. "Your choice, ma'am, always." He tipped his hat respectfully, the gesture simple yet meaningful. Taya felt her pulse steady at his words. She retrieved her small bundle from beside the wagon, her only belongings left from a life that once held much more. Jacob waited a little distance away, giving her privacy. She watched him from the corner of her eye. He didn't rush her. He didn't stare. He didn't push. He simply let her move at her own pace, as if he understood her wounds without needing to ask. That gentle patience made her chest ache unexpectedly. She mounted her horse slowly, her legs still stiff from fear and exhaustion, and Jacob turned his horse toward the open trail. As they began riding side by side, though still several feet apart, the morning breeze carried the scent of sagebrush and the promise of a new day. Taya kept her eyes forward, but part of her attention remained on Jacob, watching for any shift in behavior. But Jacob remained, as he had been all along, steady, respectful, silent when silence was needed. For the first time in years, she felt the echo of safety, not complete, not permanent, but beginning, a promise stronger than fear. And though she didn't fully trust him yet, she trusted the trail a little more with him beside her.